apologies for that. Now, how I thought we would do this is, I guess, Michaela and I will just talk about the legislation changes that have happened. There's been a few changes since 2021, as well as some proposed changes that are potentially going to come up soon. So I thought we would just discuss that first, and then if you've got any questions once we've finished going through that, then you can just ask them. Does that sound all right? Amazing. All right, so I guess first of all, the October 21,
yes,
there was an update around ending a tenancy if you're in a domestic violence situation. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that, but basically, I guess during COVID, unfortunately, quite a lot of people were affected by domestic violence. And so this legislation got pushed through. Now, tenants can actually break their lease penalty-free if they are affected by domestic violence. So how that works is they fill out a domestic violence report. That needs to be signed off by an authorised professional. There is a list of those professionals. So counsellor, psychologist, police, a doctor, social worker, etc. They deliver that to us, the property managers. They don't even have to give us a copy. We just need to cite it. And then their lease can end in 7 days, or their interest in the tenancy can end in 7 days. Now, beyond that, they're not responsible for any break lease costs, any costs associated with repairing the property, as long as the repairs are domestic violence related. They have no responsibility to that lease anymore. So if they're a sole occupant of a property, that lease needs to go, that property needs to go straight on the market and re-advertised for rent without any penalty to that tenant. Now, if there is another occupant at the property, after 7 days, if they're the perpetrator, if after 7 days, we let them know that the sole interest in that tenancy is now theirs, they have the responsibility to top up the bond that's held. And all of the terms of that fixed term agreement move to that sole tenant. So that's pretty much domestic violence, as in the legislation for tenancies. Again, if you do have any questions, we'll come to those at the end. Now, October 2022, there were quite a few changes that came through. I guess the one that everybody has been asking questions about is around pets. Now, Queensland is actually the last state to introduce this, but basically landlords have lost the right to refuse pets. There are some prescribed grounds that you can refuse, but they are...
So if it is inhumane to the animal, to the pet, if it contradicts local council laws, and obviously body corporate bylaws precede that as well. So if the animal's not allowed by the body corporate, then it's not allowed. But for houses in particular, it's pretty much,
especially like for dogs and cats and your usual. Obviously, you still can't have a sugar glider or
a horse.
A horse. So there are some rules around that, but basically, Giorgio, who I'm not sure if you guys know him, but Giorgio moved up here from Victoria to work with us, and it's already legislation in Victoria. What they saw a lot of when they introduced this is tenants applying for properties without pets, the day or two after moving into the property, applying, saying, hey, we're thinking of getting a pet. I mean, we've not seen that, which is great. And we've been really fortunate. We've not seen any damage to any of our properties that we manage from pets. So that's been really great. The other thing that came into play in October 2022 was some rules around maintenance. So Michaela.
Yep, so they have now brought in the mandatory repair order, sorry, yes, just a blank there. So that one is if tenants are reporting maintenance to us, it's not actioned, it's not approved, they then issue us with a notice to remedy breach for failure to do that, and it's still not done. They can then apply to QCAT for a mandatory repair order being placed on that property. So QCAT will then, from the adjudicator, issue a statement saying this is the work that needs to be done, this is when it needs to be done by, and that repair order stays to the property. So if the tenants change, if the property sells, it's actually still with that property and must be done within the
until the works are complete.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some other minor changes that happened are, so with emergency repairs, if we're not able to get in touch with the landlord, we can spend up to 4 weeks value of the rent without any approval. That is just for emergency. So that's things like a burst pipe, a hot water system broken.
An oven, those
Yes.
essential. Yeah.
Now, obviously, we have got pretty great relationships with our tenants. They all have our mobile numbers. So if any of those situations do occur, they always do get in touch with us first. We always try and get in touch with you first. So we've not actually experienced having to spend that 4 weeks value, but that did change. Previously, it was 1 week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks rent.
Yep.
So that's doubled now. The other minor change, when a tenant comes and collects their entry condition report at the start of a tenancy, previously they had 3 days to fill that report out and get it back to us, and that sort of sat on their file until they vacated. Now they have 7 days to fill that one out. I don't think that that has any real material impact, but that is their right now. Now, I sent an email out to everybody last month, something that got pushed through very quickly and really without any sort of consultation, was this ruling around rental increases. So prior to this being pushed through, rental increases could be undertaken every 6 months. Now that cannot happen, and you must wait until the 12-month anniversary of the last increase. There was talk of including a rental cap in that, meaning capping how much you could actually increase the rent by. That did not go through. There's no further discussion around that that I've heard of. So that's something. What can be done is, so if you previously had a lease renewal for 6 months, there was an increase at the start of that 6-month renewal, you can still offer a 12-month lease renewal, and you can actually write the rent increase into the special conditions that will take effect on the 12-month anniversary of the last increase. So there are ways around it. I mean, not really around it, but I mean, you can still offer 12-month leases.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the next item that is coming into effect in Queensland from the 1st of September is the minimum housing standards. So 1st of September, this is things like properties must be structurally sound and weatherproof. They must be free from rats. Yep. It really is minimum.
Very minimum. And if, you know, we're all maintaining our properties, so it's not really a concern there.
You just want to list through.
Yeah, so be weatherproof and structurally sound, be in good repair with fixtures and fittings, such as electrical appliances, that are not likely to cause injury through normal use, have functioning locks or latches on all external doors and windows that can be reached without a ladder, free from vermin, damp and mold, include curtains or other window coverings, which provide privacy in rooms where a tenant might reasonably expect it, such as bedrooms and bathrooms, have adequate plumbing and drainage, as well as being connected to hot and cold water suitable for drinking, provide privacy in bathroom areas, and also have a functioning cooktop if a kitchen is provided, as well as include necessary fixtures for a functional laundry if laundry facilities are provided. So as we said, pretty minimal.
The only, that we will have a few properties where window locks will be required, but we've been taking note of that during routine inspections for the past few months. So that's not going to be.
This one does affect new tenancies as well as
existing. Yes. Okay, so that's it for what's been legislated. Now we want to talk about what's been proposed, what's been talked about that hasn't actually passed
yeah.
through. So there's 5 main points that they are discussing. Those are installing modifications, making minor personalization changes, balancing privacy and access, improving the rental bond process, and fairer fees. So the first 2, which are installing modifications and making minor personalization changes, these 2 are quite similar. So the minor modifications, that generally refers to people living with disabilities, the elderly. So an OT might need to come in and install, a shower rail or non-slip mats, things like that. Basically, at the moment, the process is that the tenants request permission from the owner. Generally, the owners approve that. At the end of the tenancy, the property must be brought back to the same condition that it was received in. Now, the removal of anything that was installed needs to be done in a tradesman-like manner by a qualified professional, and it needs to match the same condition that the property was received in. What they're talking about is removing the step of getting permission from the owners. Now, with the minor personalization changes, that's things like picture hooks, having a little veggie garden if they've got a yard, even furniture anchors.
Yep.
But again, the property still needs to be brought back to the original condition.
Yep.
So it's just removing, which, I mean, I don't see that as a huge deal because we do routine inspections. We're going to note that straight away. So then obviously at the exit condition report, you're aware of what's been removed. You're able to identify that it has been brought back to that same condition. So I'm not, anyway, that's what they're proposing. Now, balancing privacy and access. So tenants are saying that they want more privacy and I guess limited access to the property. So what they're discussing is at the moment, we need to provide a tenant with 7 days notice of a routine inspection. We need to provide them 24 hours notice for evaluation or for a tradesperson to go through the property to do any maintenance. What they're proposing is changes to those times. So it will be 14 days for a routine inspection and 48 hours for a for evaluation request. Tradesperson to go through, things like that. I mean, again, I think this is not a huge deal because generally when a tenant reports maintenance, they want to get their work done. So, if a tradesperson can go out this afternoon, that afternoon and get the work done, they're going to do that. And I don't see a tenant having an issue with that, not coming back saying that we need to provide 48 hours notice if it's something that they've requested. With the routine inspections, again, we plan out, quite far in advance, so it's not going to have any material effect, I don't believe. What they are discussing is reducing the frequency of physical routine inspections. So in Victoria, in New South Wales, routine inspections can only be conducted every 6 months. At the moment in Queensland, we can do up to 4 per year. So they are talking about changing that to once every 6 months, and potentially in between that physical inspection, you can do a digital inspection on the off 3 months. So digital, physical, digital, physical.
Mixed thoughts around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled by that proposal, to be honest. The next proposal is improving the rental bond process. So at the moment, you see it on current affair quite regularly, like being ripped off by your real estate agent, things like that. And that's because I guess sometimes
those other agencies don't have the transparency and communication.
Well, a lot of times people do feel that their bond is going to get taken from them. They do have that fear. So now what they're proposing is for a bond claim to actually be lodged, you're going to need proof, you're going to need invoices, you're going to need photos, so that you're not just claiming, a random figure for whatever repairs you're claiming. So, if we have done any bond claims from any of your properties, you'll know that we do that anyway. So I don't think there's going to be too much change around the rental bond
No.
process. There is some talk at the moment, if a property is over $700 a week in Queensland, you can negotiate the amount of bond that's held. And there's talk around changing that to $900 a week, properties over $900 a week. Anything under that, 4 weeks is what we hold as bond. Now, the last point is fairer fees and charges. So we'll talk about water charging first. So at the moment in Queensland, if your property is water compliant, if the property is individually metered for water, you can on-charge the water usage component of your urban utilities bill. So on your urban utilities, you'll see there's a water connection fee, there's a sewerage connection fee, and then there's your water usage fee. At the moment, we just charge the water usage to the tenants. Now, there's not really any guidelines around a time period that a tenant can be invoiced for those. So in an effort to help tenants budget for invoices and whatnot, so that they don't just get like a whole 12 months worth of water invoices at once, invoices now need to be sent within well, this is what they're proposing. Invoices will now need to be sent within 1 month of the bill issue date. So that, yeah, just to help them from any situations where they get a whole heap of bills at once and suddenly it's financial stress. I mean, I think for most of you, we receive your bills directly. So in that case, we invoice immediately anyway. Also potentially looking at increasing. So at the moment, tenants have 4 weeks to pay invoices. So potentially stretching that out as well. Not by much, just to potentially 6 weeks. Now, this is the proposal that I'm not super thrilled about, but again, it is to be in line with other states in Australia. So at the moment, with our break lease process in Queensland, it's sort of an industry standard that a break lease fee of 1 week's rent plus GST is charged. That covers your next letting fee. A tenant can be charged for advertising, you know, so we can get the ad back on realestate.com. And Domain, and they are also responsible for paying the rent up until the end of their lease or until a new tenant is secured and they're paying rent. So whichever comes first. Now, what they're discussing is potentially changing this fee structure to almost a prorated fee. So depending on how far through the tenancy the tenant actually is, that will determine the level of fee that they pay. So there was some talk around, you know, if they're 75% through their fixed term agreement, that they only pay X amount. If they're 50 to 75%, they might pay this amount. And it's just a fixed fee rather than having to pay for all of these other ancillary, you know, the advertising, the break lease, and continuing to pay the rent. Yeah, I don't love that. I mean, break leases aren't scary when the vacancy rates are as low as we're currently seeing them. But I think in the future, when things start to level out and it's not as competitive, that could have some real impact. So, but I mean, yeah, this is just proposed. I don't think that, anyway, we will see. That's really it in terms of what's coming up, what's already come into place. Do you have any questions? If you do, maybe just type it into the question bar so that I can read it out to everybody and we'll address it.